各位朋友，大家好，欢迎来到文心论道，我是素心。今天呢，我们是走进坐忘的，已经是第3期节目了。坐忘呢，欢迎你。
谢谢，你好。
坐忘，你看咱们是第1期呢，就是你介绍了一下这个自由卡车运动的一些情况，还有一些感想。第2期呢，我们把你的第7次演讲呢，我们加了一下英文字幕呢推出来，有图片，有视频，有英文字幕，还有一个音乐。但是呢，挺遗憾的，没有你的声音。所以呢，很多观众呢特别感兴趣，所以我想呢，就是说，请你呢，就是把这个声音呢，再给我们，再重演一下，因为我们知道，你说加拿大，咱们这个自由卡车运动呢，是咱们这个世界上最温和这个加拿大人最激烈，但是呢，又是非常和平欢乐的一次这个反疫苗强制、反暴政的一次这个伟大运动。但是吧，你说，我觉得哈，就是直到今天。这个主流媒体和特鲁多政府呢，都一直是用这个最恶毒的这个语言呢，来污蔑、妖魔化这个参加者。所以呢，说你看，坐忘你呢是一个学者作家，又是一位普通的这个华人妈妈，但是呢，你呢就是全程深度参与了这次活动。你说在渥太华和多伦多的很多场活动中呢，都有你这个弱小的身影，更有你这个铿锵有力的声音。因为咱们观众呢，有一个观众在下面留言，他说：“哦，他记得你的背影。”哎呀，所以挺感动的。所以呢，我就希望能把这些珍贵的这个历史时刻呢，能记录下来。所以呢，我想呢，就邀请你能把你这7次演讲呢，咱们重新这样录制一下，让精彩呢重现。那同时呢，也请介绍一下这个每一次演讲的这个相关的有一些背景啊，以及有一些花絮，也能让这些没有机会参加活动的这些观众朋友呢，让我们能感受一下这个现场气氛。所以呢，咱们今天呢，咱们就是因为第1期演讲我们已经有了。今天呢，就请你把这个第2次演讲的题目是坚守阵地，所以呢，我们在这儿再精彩重现一下。那现在呢，就请坐忘女士呢，就给我们呢先简单介绍一下这个第2次演讲，这个是什么样的一个因素呢，能诱发起来你又做了一个第2次演讲
呢？那个政府就是对抗议者动手，是2月18号和19号这2天都就说开始打人了。然后呢，过了整整1个星期，我非常的愤怒，因为就被彻底驱散了嘛。被驱散之后，这些人是完全无辜的呀，因为从头到尾我都经历了，这就是非常的冤愤。大路不平有人踩，我就是处于这种最原始、最朴素的这种动机。我就说，你们把这个大卡车给赶走了，然后演讲平台没了，那我就拿一个喇叭我就上呗。所以我后来就在朋友那儿就借了一个喇叭。后来大家的这个就是游行地点就变成了战争博物馆，因为国会山那边全部都给封掉了。行人也不能进去，只能说你住在那儿，你出示，你有证明，你住在那个区域，你才可以进去。所以就连行人都不能进去，不要说是车了。所以大家只好就是被镇压之后的，就是那个周6和周日就在这个战争博物馆。所以周日那天，我就拿了一个喇叭，准备好这个演讲，我就写下了，就是看到镇压这里头所有的这些悲怆的，就是极具历史意义的时刻，我把它写成英文，我首先是中文，然后翻译成英文。所以到了那天，我就拿了一个大喇叭，然后拿了我的演讲稿，我就跳到那个石墩子上，我就开始演讲，我什么也不管。这就是愤怒吧，就是因为这种就是无辜者被践踏，宪法被践踏，我作为一个就是平民，一个弱势群体，而且是鸡蛋和墙产生冲突的时候，绝对的站在这个鸡蛋这边，所以我就用喇叭，然后就开始了战斗。
这尤其是像我们来自于天朝，来到了一个像这个加拿大是号称民主社会的一个优等生模范生，能发生这样的事情，真的是有一点让人是有点始料不及啊。所以在这种情况下做了第2次演讲。那现在呢，我们就请你，因为当时很遗憾您没有录像，我那时候也没有去安排这个，所以今天呢，你能不能给我们，再声情并茂，再给我们再做一次这个演讲，我们把这个历史时刻呢记录下来。我呢， 节目完，咱们录完节目之后呢，我会加上中文字幕。
好的，好的，谢谢。
好，有请啊。
Hold the line. It's the last sentence by Tamara, a Canadian hero, said after she was arrested. Perhaps she is the most peaceful criminal in the world. In Chinese, she is called a prisoner of conscience. On the same Thursday night, I heard the same sentence again. At about 9 p.m., near the Peace Monument, Ottawa, I think another name is War Memorial, I saw many demonstrators standing in a line, shouting the slogan, "Hold the line," all together, and then sing the anthem. They were protecting the big red truck and the driver. A bearded white man recognized me. 坐忘. We stood together, arm in arm, becoming a part of the human being wall. I am an immigrant from China. I have lived in this country for 12 years, but I have only been in Gatineau for less than half a year. Why can a Canadian on the street know me? What's more, the pronunciation of my Chinese name seems difficult for him. Let me talk about it from the beginning. On January 28, I passed by downtown Ottawa coincidentally. A middle-aged lady from Alberta wearing a maple leaf flag asked me very humbly, "Can I give this hat to your son?" It was so cold that day. My young son's ears were red for the low temperature. This kind lady represents my first impression of the French minority by Trudeau. And they were also demonized by the Ottawa police and the mainstream media as rioters. Had this lady impressed me deeply? Yes, but such people are not uncommon in Canada, where I have lived for 12 years. Isn't there such a saying? If you couldn't be friends with Canadians, you would have no friends in this world. Canadians are such kind of human beings. So in the Freedom Convoy, which lasted for more than 20 days, there didn't come any violence. On the contrary, the crime rate dropped by more than 90%. And the cleaners did not enter the area, but the ground is still very clean and tidy, which owed to those truckers and supporters. On the following days, for my disposition as a writer who is interested in observing and recording, I often go to the Ottawa downtown intentionally in the chat with other people. And I want to know why they launched this demonstration. What is their destination and how to achieve the purpose? I gradually understood the truth of the matter. This group of blue-collar Canadians, they are different with other classes who have been brainwashed by the name of political correctness, which are hypocritical and absurd concepts spreading for 4 decades, fabricated by those extreme left wings. Those protesters still maintain the basic necessary vigilance, so they can distinguish those nonsense of political correct. Obviously, their conscience and sense are still alive. When the government used the exaggeration of the epidemic as an excuse to erode the individual rights and the constitutional rights bit by bit, and finally hit the bottom line, the Optimus Primes rode riotously and defended freedom for all Canadians. Yes, all of us, even including Li Zexi, the Asian Canadian who sued the Freedom Convoy organizers. I was deeply moved by them and wrote poetry and prose to document the great history event. At the beginning of the speech, I talked about the big red truck I was very impressed by the driver because he rejected my donation at first. Finally, he accepted, but this hero's tears almost went down. The second time, I came up to him for supplying a hotel room to rest. I asked him if he remembered me. He smiled. Yes, of course, I remember this beautiful face. However, he refused to go to the hotel. He said that he would fight in the truck to the last moment and give this opportunity to another who needed more. On the night of Thursday, February 17th, escorted by many supporters, the big red truck moved and stopped at the intersection of Wellington Street and the Bank Street. I stood down his big truck with my friend, and I could clearly see that it was he who was inmate. So he was not arrested or left, which comforted me a lot. However, after a day or two, I learned that there was a truck which broken in two, and the trucker was arrested by the police. Could it be him? I don't know the answer yet. I don't know his name. I'm still very concerned. These truckers and peaceful demonstrators are the ordinary Canadians, kind, friendly, honest, very brave, freedom-loving, and dedicated to Canada. And they slowly got to know me, a Chinese woman who always spreads the poetry and prose for the freedom convoy in the streets. And I even bravely stepped to the line stage in front of Parliament Hill to give a speech, although English is not my native language. In this way, I, an immigrant from the Orient, have established a heart-to-heart relationship with other Canadian patriots because we all have the same desire for freedom. On the other hand, I penetrated the lines and figured out the bullying facts of the mainstream media and the Ottawa police. They framed this peaceful movement as insurrection to break the normal life of local residents. And they pretend that those crowded people who condolence in the support truckers are invisible. The supporters came from all over of Canada, including local residents of Ottawa. In the process, the standoff between the Free Convoy and government has escalated. Politics is a tricky and cunning issue, and there is filled with those people who are crave for power, money, and there are hypocrisy, greedy, and vanity. But this moment, we Canadians, the most peaceful, kind, even timid people in the world, are involved in this political issue opposing dictatorship. For the love of freedom, the love of Canada, the love of our children and grandchildren, we are involved in the great political struggle. We lack experience of political issues and seem a bit clumsy, but I still heard people say that maybe there will be communists to make violent troubles and then frame the truckers' faults. So the government will make good use of it to crack down the demonstration. However, this wicked did not happen in this way, and we waited for another version, even much more absurd and malicious. On February 14th, Prime Minister Trudeau sent the truckers and supporters a big surprise present on the Valentine's Day. He avowed Emergency Act. This situation occurred 4 times in Canadian history, 3 other times during the 2 World Wars, and a violent demonstration in Quebec in the 1980s. In the past 21 days, truck drivers have suffered in the freezing temperature of minus 20 degrees, left their hometowns and their relatives, risked offending the authority, losing their jobs and being frozen bank accounts, and they still use the weak power of the grassroots to fight against the dictatorship of the elites. They overcame their traumas, frustrations, and depressions, and defended the constitutional rights for all Canadians and the future generations. They were fighting a good fight in a peaceful and self-disciplined way, with enough respect for the law and what they finally aimed to is freedom guaranteed by the Charter. The Black Lives Matter organization, the Swedish environmental protector Young Girl, and even the terrorists released all have access to talk in face with Prime Minister Trudeau. He is such a gentle, nice, and generous leader before them. If he hadn't compensated them a big money from taxpayers, I would tolerate him. But this time, he completely had in a rat hole when he really needs to be responsible and repent of everything he has done, such as the deaths and the injury caused by the forced vaccine, causing unemployment, exaggerating the epidemic for dictatorship, continuing the blockade, causing the economy to decline, violating the freedom of citizens. The lockdown has also caused serious psychological trauma to many people and even many suicides. In this crucial time, so many Canadian citizens came to the capital and they only appealed to leave the mandate vaccines. Our Prime Minister had disappeared over 20 days. Worse than that, he commanded some brutal police to attack the unarmed peaceful protesters, and he froze people's bank accounts without any reason, just because they were suspected to donate Freedom Convoy organization. Does the law in Canada ever prohibit peaceful demonstration? The born responsibility of the media is to monitor the government, but what are these mainstream media doing? Now they are becoming the mental thoughts of the government, psychologically cooperating with the bullying from the police and the government. The police hit those law-abiding citizens, trampled people with horses, and then the police office lied blatantly that it was a poor old man who threw a bicycle and attacked the mounted police. Factually, she is just an old woman who needs a walker. Policeman, shame on you. You police are breaking the law, not these truckers and supporters. Now, what's going on in Canada? Do you still remember Hong Kong in 2018? Canada now is echoing with Hong Kong. And what is the next step? Is Canada also returning to China? Other Chinese and we came to Canada for freedom. If it became a tyrant country, then where would my children flee to? Now I'm going to talk about why did all this happen today? I have often heard a saying previously that as long as there is a good political system, the safety, happiness, justice, and freedom of the people can be guaranteed. Then Canada's political system is not good enough. If not, then our ever quiet and happy life in Canada is an illusion or propaganda? Of course not. So why is it so bad now? My answer is that a good political system is not enough to guide us to guard a safe, happy life in a civilized world. For example, this political system has elected a guy like Trudeau to be prime minister twice. Next, I'm going to speak out a lot of things that are politically incorrectness. And if it were spoken out by a white man, he would probably get fired, socially die, or even go to jail. However, I am an Asian, invisible minority. You can understand that obviously I'm not a white first racist, but I can guarantee that I'm not in danger of being frozen, my bank account, being sentenced, or being assassinated. One of the important cornerstones of Western civilization is the Christian faith. Over these years, some Western-led elites are actively and continuously destroying this foundation. I remember I read a book in which a Western scholar advocated multiculturalism more than 20 years ago when I was in a Chinese university. As for my point of view, it's okay to eat Chinese food or speak Chinese in a non-official circumstance. No problem at all. But how about this old Chinese saying, which is spreading now in Chinese? A person should suffer all of torment so that he can be supreme enough to reign other people. It's a highlight time in all one's life. I would like to ask all people who live in a modern civilization, no matter where you are from, is it acceptable for you to this popular Chinese evaluation in a civilized society? China was originally an atheist country. At the beginning of the 20th century, it began to accept materialism from the Soviet Union. This country, which originated from agricultural civilization and has been under dictatorship for over 3,000 years, has never really entered the modern civilization world in terms of ideology. Can those Westerners who advocate multiculturalism really understand Chinese culture and other Orient cultures? I am an immigrant from China. I'm not a China hater. And in some aspects, I love Chinese culture very much. For example, I love Chinese poetry. We have a large quantity of splendid ancient magical poems. I have been fed on by these glorious poetry classics mentally. I am deeply proud for them. Additionally, I have many Chinese friends who are also kind and honest, just as most Canadians with normal values. And I love them and respect them very much. What I am criticizing now is a morbid part of Chinese culture and the stupid and hypocritical multicultural concept in Canada. Even the concept of globalization is what I will deny. How can we take globalization into reality if all of countries cannot accept the universal common values? Cannot believe in God, cannot be close to God, and cannot become a global huge village on the basis of similar values. Globalization factually have become the current situation. It helps the big capitalists get low-cost slaves from developing countries and make huge profits. Despite that, they sometimes oppose the terrible human beings' rights. In developing area, their actions can expose their true thoughts. They never stop to grab black money. Yes, they are hypocritical enough. These business elites, political elites, and intellectual elites have taken advantage of the low human rights conditions in developing countries to get rich, while blue-collar classes in Western countries have to lose their jobs, minus their salaries, and now they are on the way to be enslaved by the control-free Canada government with the excuse of COVID-19. For many years, Western mainstream media has been bribed by politicians, and the school education system has been manipulated by the extreme left wings, so many people have been brainwashed. Consequently, they are fooled by some hypocritical, ridiculous, and chaotic ideas, which are very far from the truth. Many Canadians have betrayed God and are abated by a group of arrogant intellectual elites who live in an ivory tower with too much rational conceit, completely ignoring the hardships of labor class. The Freedom Convoy is an awakening and resistance of blue-collar class. What's more, I came to recognize the greatness of Canadians. because these working class people are the foundation and the backbone of Canada rather than the elites. As a Chinese-born Canadian from my childhood, my surroundings tell me I should study hard, strive to become an elite, and to be accepted by upper class. Factually, I am only a daughter of a working family, and finally, I got a master's degree from a Chinese top university and became a writer and a poet. But in this track, what really motivated me was my relentless curiosity and my desire to discover a new world, as well as my enthusiasm for literature, not the damn dream of becoming a supreme person to overrule others after enough torment of struggling. Thank God, I am still a normal person, though I grew up in a world occupied by Marxist materialism and ancient Chinese traditional culture. The Freedom Convoy taught me a good lesson that the commoners in this movement is much sublime than the elites in the Parliament Hill. I doubted profoundly whether the leader elected can really present the former. How can you answer me what heck the emergent act was voted to operate? And how could they be so stone-hearted and arrogant to let these truckers' heroes alone in Ottawa for 3 weeks in such a frozen season? Then they crack down this peaceful protest by violence. Why not sit down to negotiate? How can they break the promise of the election? Shame on you, those liberties, conservatives and NDPs. You are all cunning and tricky manipulators who play the political games very well. You don't love Canada and you only care about your own powers and profits. On the other hand, those truckers and protesters have maintained the precious intuition, conscience, and courage of human beings who are not polluted by greed. When the freedom given by God was eroded and violated, they stand up and resist. They have not been induced by rational conceit, nor did they are abated from the right way supervised by God. I have talked so much just now, but frankly, I have not studied political science or sociology, and I'm just a poet who loves reading and thinking. Furthermore, I love real and concrete life much better than the world in the book. I am qualified as a writer because I have enough empathy. So I believe my eyes, my ears, and my heart to figure out the truth of the Freedom Convoy, which is great enough to be written down in Canadian history. It's not an unlawful insurrection or Ottawa occupation, but it's a peaceful war to protect free Canada. This war has broken out between Canadian patriots and the authoritarian government manipulated by foreign agents. In the history of Canada, there's full of wars, disasters. In the history of China, there's full of wars, disasters, and I have read many great Russian novels, which is like China, when divisions occurred, came bloody and death. But it is not a correct way to frighten violence with another violence, because people will come into a barbarian, dark, and chaos world. We shouldn't forget, this is Canada, and Canada is really different. We Canadians are kind, patient, and peaceful. We are defending freedom in a legal way. We have the great tradition of negotiating at a round table to solve the conflicts. On 21st February 2022, some people have conspired to destroy this great heritage, and all of the innocent truckers and supporters were charged unlawful.
Yes, there is a crime happened, but the criminals are some people who have betrayed Canada in the parliament rather than in trucks. The charter was raped on that day by the disgusting voting. However, today I still stand up to back up these truckers' heroes because if I had kept silent to these demonized people, maybe one day nobody would help me in a similar situation. As a poet whose native language is Chinese, I have written a short poem to describe the freedom convoy in an ancient Chinese metrical rhyme. Firstly, I will read in Chinese, then I will read the English version. 加拿大至暗时刻，五言绝句，写于国会戒严法案通过之后次日凌晨，2022年2月21号。车骑未封国，诸臣辞便涛。晴天其利笑，乌作鹿鸣刀。The darkest hour of Canada. The truckers are protecting the maple leaf country, while the senators in parliament are practicing the sophistry. The optimus primes are honking horns altogether, so Big Brother is so scared that he framed them as daggers, starving citizens. Probably it is the only opportunity now that we can grow up to fight for freedom. If we lose, Canadians will live in a long time of darkness and enslavement. So hold the line. We will win. Thank you, truckers. Thank you all.
谢谢。大家肯定和我一样，隔着屏幕都能感受到坐忘女士的这种悲愤和这个痛心。不过说心里话，那一段开始的时候，看到那些卡车司机们，他们那么欢乐，那么幽默，还给我们带来那么多的欢乐，真的是。你说最后呢？你说特鲁多呢？他就是硬是这个，哎呀，太不光是说那么多难听的话，而且呢，最后他就是用一个戒严法，然后把他就镇压了。再加上你说这个李泽熙，哎呀，这他们的丑恶呢，我们现在呢，我们就不说了。邹芳女士，你能不能跟我们分享一些，就是在这个过程中间呢，就是比较就是我们很感人的，或者是你难忘的这一些人和事。我们还是想多铭记一下，就是多听一下这些卡车司机们他们的善良、他们的执着和他们的一些感人故事。
是这样啊，就是我记得我是2月26号在战争博物馆，然后做这个演讲的。当时呢，是另外一个组织在进行这个游行活动，那个组织应该是叫做For Canadians， 如果没记错的话，他那个领头者是一个俄国人，叫做 Vlad。实际上他们的这个反疫情抗议是早于卡车司机的，然后在那天是上午，后来他们就又让我去那个卡车司机被打散之后去他们的一个叫 Empire。我忘记那个名字了，在那个营地里，所以我那天早上讲了一次，晚上在营地又讲了一次。在营地讲的时候呢，其实是一个就是志愿者，他母语是英语嘛，他来念这个稿子，只不过中文那首诗就是我念的。他们那听众是很激动的，最后就是有一个那个卡车司机，他因为我就说我不知道那个红色卡车司机怎么样了嘛，后来有一个司机告诉我说，他说他知道。他就告诉我，后来我去查，后来我发现他搞错了，他说的是另外一个红色卡车司机，但是后来我无意中在网上又找到他的下落了，他就是一个东欧过来的移民，他叫卡萨巴 VZ， 应该是一个匈牙利人，非常的勇敢啊。那天他其实就是他的确真的就是被打了，他是自己下去的，他自己那个走下自己的卡车，那个就是我其实上次也说过了，他被打得特别狠。后来他的这些视频就都流出来了嘛，就在网上，我一下就认出他来了。
对，
后来
看到过。
因为他特别有名，后来我在去大瀑布演讲的时候都跟他合影过，我都可以把这些合影跟录像放上来。他后来就有一个人专门给他写了一首歌，那个歌叫做 Hey Brother， 就是 我唱歌变调啊，然后这个流传的很广啊。他是一个非常非常勇敢的人，这样的话就知道了他的这个下落，我就很激动嘛，很开心，因为他后来又放出来了嘛，虽然他被打得很厉害，后来他其实就一直在坚持战斗，他就跟那几个就是驻扎在那个就当他们最中心区域的几个人在一起，那个大胡子后来我也在网上找到他了，因为在 Facebook 上无意中看到一张他的照片，我就认出来了。后来知道他的名字叫做 Ben， 然后 Ben 呢，他就是一个加拿大本地人，他就是这个中间最高的那个大吊车的那个主人。在网上找到的就是他被喷了那个胡椒水的照片，就我看的就是心里面很难受的啊。然后后来我去那个多伦多的时候，演讲的时候我也碰到他了，就这些人后来也就都重新联系上了，所以非常非常激动。
挺感谢的，我觉得好像就是你看你说的是来自俄罗斯的，来自匈牙利的，就来自一些东欧的，觉得好像就是只有我们好像对这个社会主义才真正才了解。你说当地的这些，他们有一些人呢，对于这个社会主义这个向往，我们真的是有点不可思议哦。
是的，是的，他们是就是没有挨过社会主义铁拳，而且另外呢。我认为是那个就是反基督的力量，这些年就是一直在布局，就是在教育系统，在这种宣传系统，就是一直在洗脑。这种洗脑出来的结果就是他们已经就是谎言重复1000遍，已经变成真理了。因为我现在在上学嘛，我的同班同学就20岁出头的，就本科生，那他们就非常直接的在课堂上说向往共产主义的。所以这个是很可怕，非常非常可怕的。我记得当年胡适说过这样一句话，他说共产主义来了，没有自由也没有面包。但是比如说现在我们看这个上海的这个例子，上海这个封锁疫情，那这个非常非常惨的。它不是说缺少物资的问题，物资一点都不缺少，而是因为肆无忌惮的权力他要寻租啊，就他来分配这些物资，他要利用他的这种分配权力来这个就是强买，然后哄抬物价，这样最终结果就是物资有，但是它被浪费，然后这些食物都被倒掉，然后腐烂，但是另一方面有人饿得跳楼了，所以就说。这个在这种高度集权这种共产主义社会里，它是没有自由也没有面包的。那个很多加拿大这种左倾的人，他们不知道这点，完全不知道，所以非常令人焦虑的。
对，所以呢，有时候呢，感觉这节目越做，开始是只是闹着玩的，越做压力越大，所以我们呢就不一边呢，要是让我们华人要清醒起来。同时呢，好像感觉很有必要呢，让这个当地人，安逸太久的这个本地人，让他们呢也要觉醒。哎呀，真的也是这个是责任重大，我们努力，我们一起努力。所以呢，我希望能把你这几期节目呢，我们全部都把它做出来。希望能更多的人呢能看到，因为我们也力量有限，但是呢，我们尽我们自己的努力去做吧。非常感谢你。也感谢我们热心观众，有很多人特喜欢你，希望你呢也一定要经常要看到你。我说我们努力。那好，那咱们今天呢，咱们就到这儿。下一期我们下一个周四我们录，那因为我要制作一下呢，应该就是周五才能放出来，所以呢，请大家呢周五来关注一下坐忘老师。那好，那咱们今天呢就到这儿，我们下期再见。
谢谢
你，
再见。